Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindie Chavez here. Today is Wednesday, September the 12th, 2018, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, your second daily dose of happy for the day. And we're going to be continuing a conversation we had early this morning, Cindie and I are, basically coming out of our show topic this morning when we were exploring, we were doing one of our regular series that we've been doing about looking into individuals who are wealthy, who are also great people, who do good stuff in life. And out of that, we were looking at Jack Canfield, and Jack had, 7 steps, 7 suggestions on how to achieve success. And one of them really caught our attention caught my attention anyway. I'm not sure if it caught your attention, but it caught my attention about what it takes to build your faith up. Which I'm tentatively calling faith on fire, although he called it firing up your faith or something like that. But it's one of those things that I think is probably fairly well covered by others. But I always found it to be a very interesting topic because for myself, my own level of belief has always been questionable about things in general, not just law of attraction. I mean, I have always had a big difficulty building faith in something, building belief in something. In fact, when I first learned that Abraham Hicks advocated the idea that a belief is a thought that you think over and over again, that was the first time I actually had like a method I could use that actually worked, that would make sense to me. But I also realized even using that method, this is a bigger topic than that. And it's an important one because what we believe is what we think about most, and what we think about is what we manifest. So belief plays a really big role, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was noticing that you were talking about belief is a thought that you think over and over, and you refer to that as a method. And so I'm guessing that you're talking about choosing a belief, something you want to believe, and then consciously thinking that thought over and over until you have faith in it.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
That's definitely what I try to do. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, it reminds me of what so many systems do with belief, like using affirmations and using mantras and right. I mean, because a lot of those things we try to repeat over and over.
Right.
And then, of course, when we talk about this sometimes, the things that got repeated over and over to us when we were kids often become beliefs, and sometimes limiting beliefs that we carry on through our life, or at least until we become aware of them and decide we want to change them and choose a different one.
And that word limiting is really, really interesting to me, because if a belief is something that we keep thinking over and over again, why would a belief become limiting? I think I can understand to some extent why it would happen, but I think it's a really important point that kind of gets overlooked a lot, because a belief, I mean, when I pick a belief that I want to kind of build up for myself, it's usually tied to something I want to manifest or some area of my life I want to improve. So I want to acquire a better feeling belief about it. And that's not necessarily what's behind, what we're taught, shall we say, as we're growing up, what we're brainwashed into, perhaps.
Well, I think, that limiting beliefs are mostly not beliefs we choose for ourselves and decide to cultivate. They're beliefs that we've gotten from somewhere else or someone else.
Probably. And yet I can also tell you, I have noticed in myself, and I think in others too, that there are times when it is possible that I create a limiting belief for myself in the belief that it's going to help me. Not that I was thinking of it as being a limiting belief, but I created a belief that limited myself in a way that I didn't expect it to.
I agree. I totally agree that happens. And it's an interesting thing to think about.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. That sometimes, I mean, I think it goes along with the idea that we've talked about before, using a very simple example, but, don't talk to strangers or don't run out in the street.
Right.
Things that served us really well when we were 3 or 4 years old. And then we grew into adulthood, and, there may be an occasion where we have to run out into the street. It may be to do something good, right? It may be to save
the kid who ran out into the street.
Right. And of course we know that we talk to strangers all the time. So those beliefs at one time served us, now they don't. And yeah, I think you're right. I think sometimes we choose a certain belief for ourselves that maybe serves us at the time. And then, the way our brain works is those neural connections get made and things become habits. I mean, we have habits of thought. We have habits of belief.
We do. Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't even take a lot of repetition. Like, especially I think when we're younger. I remember I used to teach an intuitive painting class. And one of the first things that we did in the beginning of the intensive, because it was a class that lasted a whole weekend, was I had everyone tell their first memory of art. And it was always mind-blowing because the people in my class were, all different ages, but all adults. I mean, anywhere from, 20 to 70. And almost the majority of first art memories were not good memories.
Oh, dear.
And sometimes they would tell, I was just coloring away. I was making this picture of a horse and I was just so proud of it. And I was just going away. And then the teacher or, someone walked up and said, oh, well, you don't draw very well. Drawing's not for you. Here, let's put you over here so you can learn some other activity.
Mm.
And so here was the person, who was in their 60s and had never picked up a paintbrush or a crayon or a pencil to draw again.
Right.
And, like 55 years of, I've always wanted to make art, but somebody told me that I wasn't good at it. I thought, oh my goodness, shame on that person. But it's like, in other words, just that one comment on that young, tender soul created a limiting belief. It limited them almost their whole life, where they wouldn't pick up a paintbrush, right? So sometimes it doesn't take a whole lot of repetition, which actually is a really good thing to remember. Because we may have developed our own limiting belief that in order for me to change a belief and choose something that's better, that's more creative, that's more powerful, I'm going to have to repeat this thing over and over and over and over. Maybe we don't. Maybe sometimes we can just say, this belief's not serving me. What would be a better one? And choose a better one.
I think there is something to that. And I think that part of the reason this is what I consider to be a very involved topic is because I think there are a number of pieces to it. One piece certainly is belief. Another piece, and we usually refer to this in one way or another when we're talking about this kind of thing here in law of attraction circles, is resistance. And I would define resistance in the context of this discussion in terms of a general level of resistance to the belief. In other words, to what degree do I resist whatever the content of that belief is? That's what my resistance is. And now you put those two together, and that gives you a pretty good, kind of like a teeter-totter, a little balancing scale. So you can kind of measure, okay, well, how much resistance is there? How much belief is there? To what degree can you influence one way or the other, and so on and so forth. But I think there's also a third factor. And the third factor I would call confidence. And the reason I would say confidence is separate from belief is because I think you can actually work on believing something by repeating it over and over again, by saying, yes, I really love that, but a variety of different ways. But if your confidence level is low, you're not going to do a whole lot.
It's interesting that you said this, because this morning I opened up one of the favorite books that I have, which is a compilation of writings by Neville Goddard, who you know is one of my favorites.
Right.
And now this is the part that kind of blew my mind. I read one. It's a compilation of actual books. So some of them are really short, like a few pages, and some of them are much longer with lots of chapters. And I read one that I saw the title and I thought I'd read it. I know I've read it before. And I didn't remember a single thing in it. And when I was reading it, my mind was I was like, oh my goodness, this is like, wow, where did this come from? I don't remember reading it. But one of the things that he said, he used the word God. And I always want to clarify with Neville Goddard, he uses scriptures a lot from the New Testament Christian Bible. But he defines everything in a very esoteric way, which I think most Christians may reject or at least be a little shocked by and not want to accept, because he looks at everything in a very different way. So I say all that to say, when he uses the word God, we can absolutely interchange the word universe or the unseen realm or whatever you want to say there, whatever you think is the power that is supporting you, right?
Yeah.
In these endeavors, you can definitely put it there and be fine with that with his writings. But the quote was that your faith in God is directly shown, measured by the measure of confidence you have in yourself.
Yeah, there we go.
And I thought, wow, I mean, that's a pretty big statement, because many of us may say, oh, I have complete faith in the universe. I know the universe can do it, but I don't feel very confident in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying to me, well, I can tell you how much faith you have in the universe by how confident you are. That's the measure of it. And it's like, oh, wow.
Well, that's just it. It works both ways. It's not like it's a one directional thing.
Right. So it was funny, because that was one of the quotes that I kind of took away. And I didn't do this in preparation for our podcast today. I just did this as a matter of, I try to spend a little bit of time every morning reading something that's going to help me in my faith, or, help me feel more confident. I don't remember ever reading that line before. So I thought it was interesting that you said it too.
Well, it's pretty clear that one or both of us attracted it.
Yeah.
I mean, to have you studying it independently of me saying, hey, by the way, confidence is important, there's an attraction going on there for sure.
So the thing I like to remind people of when we have conversations that bring up faith is really the key. Holding the vision is the key to creating. Having faith in, that it's possible, that it's going to come to pass, that it can happen for you. And it sounds like such a big, powerful thing, and it is. And yet we have faith all the time. When I put a postage stamp on a bill or letter and throw it in a mailbox, I have faith it's going to get there. I don't think about it again.
But we don't think about that normally as being faith, do we? We think of that as like a transaction.
Does it always get there? In
well, no, not necessarily.
In my decades of mailing things, I may have had something get lost in the mail, maybe. So, if I'm a little concerned about it, then I add some special service that's going to make sure it gets there, right?
Yeah.
I get delivery confirmation or a certified mail or whatever. But I mean, for the most part, we're mailing things, or at least now everything's digital a lot. But at one time, we were mailing things constantly. And
well, it's even worse with digital. I mean, I know quite a bit about email. Let me tell you, it's not one of the most reliable technologies ever invented.
But we do have faith in it.
But
right?
we do. We do.
We send a text message to somebody, and you know what? If they don't reply, we may even say, well, you didn't even reply to my text. And we never even wonder whether they got it or not.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Like, we have complete faith that they got it, right?
What's worse is the tools that we have to track it, too, for like an email. There are tools we have to track emails, but they're even less trustworthy. The method, I mean, we've all seen it. Like, you'll see a little note at the bottom of a commercial, spam email, saying something about tracking and so forth. And that's because they actually build things in so that if you open your email, there's a little JavaScript or something that's running that basically sends a little note back to them saying, the email got opened. And that sounds like it's so foolproof. So now I know that it got opened, right? Well, actually wrong. Because it turns out there are a whole lot of ways to game that. So
it doesn't always work.
It doesn't.
I have track on my email. I don't hide it. It's right there at the bottom. And I don't send out spam. But it helps me with my business email and email to my clients that I have a fairly good idea that they did get it. So I think that,
and I wasn't trying to throw cold water on. I was just trying to simply point out that even the things...
It's not always trustworthy.
Yeah, even the things that we believe in don't always work out the way we expect them to, but that doesn't stop us from believing in them. It's not like I stop sending emails, like, I don't believe any more emails are going to get through.
Right.
I send emails anyway.
Somebody says they mailed you something and it never arrived. Then you don't just say, I'm never mailing anything again.
No, they say it's a glitch. Yeah. And then you do another email.
Right. So how can we apply that to these are good things to remember when we are trying to build our own faith.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Jack Canfield says, fire up your faith. So what does that mean?
It's a good question. That's the question I asked when I first saw that. What exactly does that mean to fire up your faith? I mean, is there like a burner on the stove that I turn to high?
That's what I want. Right?
Yeah, right.
I think there is, though. I mean, I think most of us anyway can, I never want to take for granted that just because I experience something that it's the common experience, but I mean, we're humans, we have most things in common. I think everybody's had that experience before where they were excited that something was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They were expectant. Even not in the metaphysical realm, but in the physical realm. You have tickets to a concert. You're excited about it.
Yeah.
It's going to be so great.
Mm-hmm.
You're expecting it to be fantastic, right?
Funny thing is you can actually go to a concert with a friend, and it's the friend who's excited about it, and it's not really your favorite kind of music or whatever, but as showtime comes, your excitement level builds anyway.
Well, see, that's that energy that entrains to itself, right? So That's why it's so important that we listen and read and hang out with people that have faith, that believe.
That's right.
So we plant gardens. I mean, you do this, or
well, actually, I don't. I'm like the world's worst gardener, but fortunately, we have some really skilled people to do it.
Right, but you recognize that the people that work for you and are doing the actual planting, you have faith that the stuff they plant is going to grow, right?
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we have faith all the time.
Yeah.
So I guess the idea is, how do we really fire it up?
Well,
also,
how is it that we feel like faith is something that we have to acquire because we don't have faith in something? Like you said, we have all kinds of evidence of faith all over the place that we just, rely on daily. So why is it that there are times we say to ourselves, well, geez, I don't have any faith in that, and I don't see how I could have faith in that?
That's an interesting question. I think that when we are having trouble firing up our faith or having faith at all, it's because we have gotten ourselves into a situation where we've lost hope.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling hopeless is a terrible thing to feel.
Oh, it is. It's horrible. It's a really bad place to be in because nothing seems to work.
One of the best things that anyone's ever told me after working with me is, I feel like my hope has been restored.
Oh, that is
and I don't hear that all the time because I'm not always working with someone who's in a place where they feel hopeless.
Right.
But it's a wonderful thing. It's probably my favorite thing to hear because it breaks my heart to think of someone being hopeless. I've been hopeless myself. It's a terrible feeling when you don't have any hope.
Yeah.
And so once your hope is restored, that's when you can start working on faith. So if you can't find any faith, I think that's the issue. And how do we restore our hope? I think it's by remembering successes that we've had in the past, learning about other people's successes.
And I love the fact that you brought up the fact that we do have lots of examples of faith in our everyday lives that we overlook. Because in the past, I'm like most people, particularly anybody who has been brought up in a Judeo-Christian environment, particularly Christian, where the common way of expressing how to acquire faith is all you need is the faith of a mustard seed, the size of a mustard seed. And I have to tell you, whenever that has been said to me, all it did was make me feel more depressed. It didn't enliven me. It didn't make me feel hopeful. It made me feel worse. Now,
because it's like you must not even have the smallest thing ever.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. Whereas if they had pointed out what you pointed out, that I have faith that the mail's going to get there, that would have been an entirely different way to say it. Well, okay, I can latch onto that to some small degree, yeah. But you talk about all you have to do is have the faith of a mustard seed. Well, basically, you just told me you can tell I don't have any faith at all. So just increase it to mustard seed size and you're winning. Like, well, thank you so much. I can tell you have no faith in me for saying that to me.
Well, I think that's true. When we're in that place, when we're in that very down place where we feel hopeless, that's not a real encouraging thing.
Not really, no.
All we really need is this much, and we don't even have that.
Thank you so much. Yes, I feel really totally depressed. Where's the nearest gun? I want to shoot myself.
Well, speaking of faith, I have great faith in all of our listeners and our subscribers, especially because of the feedback that we get. And I don't know, it's always so good. Like whenever we get a message from someone.
Oh, yeah.
It's always so uplifting. Like I feel like, wow, we must have a group of people that listen to us, that subscribe to our podcast, that are just fired up.
They are
ready to go.
Well, talk about building faith. They help us build faith in ourselves, in our podcast, just by getting those messages. And we love it.
And so I want to just make sure that we take a minute to encourage people to subscribe and to reach out and to call us even. If you're listening live,
Absolutely.
That would be great.
We love all those things. Yeah.
Yes.
In fact,
so how do they do that?
I've been messing around with the homepage actually, and I still have a little work to do on it. But one of the first things that I did today on the homepage of the website at loatoday.net is I added a new icon that you can click on to subscribe. It's the very first icon. There are now 4 options under the subscription section of the homepage. The very first option is an option that anyone who ever has an iPhone or an iPad or iPod will recognize the icon. It's the icon for the podcast app that's built in. And if you click it, it just takes you right to your podcast's app and says, do you want to subscribe? You say yes, and you're subscribed. It's never been easier than that. Now, that particular link is just for Apple users, for the iPhone and iPad community. For people who are Android users, there's a second link below that I added in. And Wendy Dillard was testing it for me today. And she said to me, Walt, I love what you try to do there, but it's not working. Go back to the old method. So after this podcast, I'm literally going back to the old method for the second icon so that Android users will have a better way to get in, because apparently this method that I was given from the manufacturers of the software that I use for basically tracking our podcast, basically it's too confusing.
Oh, wow.
It's too confusing. And I wondered about that. It's one of the reasons I had Wendy test it for me. And it really is. In fact, I want to be giving them some feedback saying, guys, as you did some great work here, but you didn't get to the goal. It just didn't make it.
Yeah, because we talked about that this morning. With the wealth of technology that we have.
Right.
Things should be simple.
They should be. They really should be. So I'm going to, for the moment, I'm going to advise you, if you are not an iPhone user, if you're an Android user of any kind, whether it's a phone or a tablet or whatever, the recommendation I have for you is go to the Play Store. This is the one we've usually given all along. Go to the Play Store, find any kind of podcast manager that you can find there, install it. And once you install it, inside that software, you will find a search mechanism, usually represented by a magnifying glass. And if you click on that and type in LOA Today, it will pop right up and you can subscribe. That right now is the best option for people who are using Android-type devices to subscribe to us. Now, if you have the iPhone or the iPad or the iPod, that new icon we've got on the homepage, big purple icon, that's going to be your best option. That's going to be the real quick one. You can still find us just by opening the podcast app on your iPhone and doing a search within there. It will work that way too. But just clicking that icon, so that's now the quick way for an iPhone user. And that's really good too, because the majority of people actually who are podcast listeners, interestingly enough, are iPhone users. Not that Android isn't catching up, it is, but the iPhone community listens to more podcasts, interestingly enough. That was one of the things I found out today. I kind of had heard it before, but I wasn't sure. Yeah, it really is true. iPhone users listen to more podcasts.
Well, that's interesting. Well, we love you whether you're an iPhone user or an Android user.
Well, there's also a reason to think that Android's going to catch up pretty soon, by the way.
Yeah.
Google came out with a product this year called Google Podcast. And it's not yet been implemented by most podcast applications out there. But from what I can see about it, it's going to be the equalizer. I would say probably we're going to try to implement it as soon as we can on our site. But overall, within podcasting across the board, I would not be surprised if Google Podcasts brings the entire Android community up to the level of the iPhone community within a year. That's how good the new app is going to be. So People who are Android users.
And it's almost surprising that it hasn't already happened.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's one of the things I was doing some research on today. And the Android community of apps has been in complete disarray for quite some time. There has not been one app that kind of dominated the way iTunes app does, or more precisely the podcast app on an iPhone. There are a lot of them out there. I mean, you and I could probably name a bunch of them, but none of them have really gained the top dog position. It's been like this ongoing dogfight going on. And here comes Google with all of their might behind it. And they create this thing that's so simple. Literally, it's one click and you're listening. And I'm thinking, wow, good for them. Good for them, So
it might be so much easier, 6 months from now, a year from now, for us to tell our subscribers how to subscribe.
Well, I'm hoping it's going to be quicker than that. I'm hoping to implement something within a month, maybe less.
Oh, good.
If I can.
Very good.
The hardest part is just you got brand new technology, so you're always trying to figure out how do you implement this new technology in the existing system that I've got. But I want to get it there as soon as I can, because my goal is to have basically just the two icons. One on the iTunes side, one on the Android side. It's one click and boom, there's the subscribe button. That's what I want. But in the meantime, we can still have you subscribe anyway, because like we said, you can go to your iTunes. First of all, you can go to the iTunes icon that I set up on the homepage, click that, and boom, you're there. You can also do it as a search through either iTunes or the podcast app on your iPhone or iPad or whatever you're using, and do a search for LOA Today within that app, and you'll find us there. And good news, even though it isn't the one-click method yet on the Android side, you can also do a very similar thing. Just go to the Play Store, download an app, any kind of podcast app, doesn't matter. Just look for podcast. A bunch of them will show up. Install one of them. Within the app, do a search for LOA Today. We'll pop right up, subscribe, and you're done. And the beauty, why are we talking about all this? The beauty of this is when you subscribe, you get all the episodes coming. We're doing 11 episodes a week, so there's a lot of content coming your way. And that content is like, we call it your daily dose of happy for a reason, because it helps you feel better. And isn't that what it's all about? Isn't that what all of us as deliberate creators are trying to do? We're trying to feel better. Well, what better way to do it than buy an app that just, you have your friends that you're listening to every single day, because that's what we are. We're your friends, and you're our friends. That's why we love you so much. So please do become a subscriber. Also, I don't want to forget this. For those who are already subscribers, we want you to continue to I should say continue if you've been doing it, or start if you haven't been doing it. We want you to start putting out there in social media something about loatoday.net. Cindie, I wish I could convey to you just how much it's impacting the numbers. The best way I can describe it is, for the last, since like January, we have been kind of in the range of per episode, within like the first month that an episode is up, we have been getting like 100 to 125 plays out of an episode, something like that. In the last couple of weeks, by couple I mean like 4 or 5 weeks, dating back to when we first started asking people to start posting something about loatoday.net, that number has been rising. For the first time in all this time, it's starting to rise. And in fact, with one of the episodes that I did with Linda Armstrong just last Friday, it eclipsed the 200 play mark. We're hitting levels we've never hit before. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Overall, I was measuring before on like a month, how many clicks in a month. We're now getting in a week 150 to 200 clicks, 150 to 200 plays on an individual episode. And indeed, when you look at what's happening on a given day, we're averaging like 400 plays in a day with all the episodes that people are clicking on. So, the numbers are really spiking. And I know it's happening because people are putting stuff out there on social media about loatoday.net. So please keep doing that. And then finally, like you were talking about, we love to hear from people. And we've had a couple calls this week. We've had people texting us. We've had people sending in messages. We even had somebody who volunteered to be an Instagram person for us within the last week, which is phenomenal. So please keep contacting us too. We love that. We love all of that contact. We love the subscriptions particularly, because they really play a major role in helping build stuff, as do all the mentions on social media. So there's our announcements, which took a lot longer than they normally do, didn't it?
Well, it's all good. I think that we're talking about firing up our faith.
Right.
And we're talking about how energy, like I love the example that you gave about when you go to a concert with a friend.
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's not even, it's not even the band you're the most wildest about or something. It's your friend's concert ticket. Says, hey, come with me. This is a good band or whatever, whatever. And you go and the crowd is excited and you can feel that excitement. So you start to get excited. It's like, okay, this is exciting. And that is a great example of energy and training to itself.
Yes.
It's like, it's why we need to, we talk all the time about alignment and alignment first, being aligned with our goals, being aligned with those things we want to create, with the energy of creation, being aligned. And when we get around people, we align with their energy a lot of the time. And so it's the same thing that goes for listening to podcasts.
It does. Yeah.
Our podcasts and other people's podcasts. It's like whatever we're connecting to, that's where our energy level starts to want to naturally align to. So it really is right along with the topic when you're talking about connecting, reaching out, calling in and talking to us, saying hello, being a subscriber, sharing on social media. Today I listened to loatoday.net. Those kind of things. It's all about alignment. That's what's happening when we do those sorts of things.
Well, you got me convinced. From now on, as I do the little pitch about subscribing and sharing, I'm going to include your phrase, because I love your phrase, energy entrains unto itself. Help and train the energy by subscribing, because that's exactly right. I hadn't thought of it like that, but you're right. We are doing a combination of thing here. We are building our own energy. We are building our belief. We are helping to build the belief of our listeners because of that exciting energy that we're building up. And so it becomes contagious to them. And then they share it with other people that they've heard of or that they know about, or maybe who don't know them at all on social media. And it then trains to them. It just keeps in training over and over and over again.
It's like circular and it keeps building. It's a spiral. Yeah. It's an upward spiral. We all talk about sometimes that downward spiral. Well, we want to create an upward spiral.
Why don't we talk about upward spirals more? You're right. We talk about downward spirals all the time. Why don't we talk about upwards?
So that's what we're doing.
Oh, it's that's right. Sorry.
Moving up. And in training to that type of energy, you can tell a lot about what someone values and prioritizes by where they spend their money and where they spend their time.
Yeah.
Because that's how we devote attention and focus to things. And so, I always say, give me your checkbook and your calendar and I'll tell you what's important to you. And so when we think about it that way, the books we read, the people we talk to, the movies we watch, the podcasts we listen to, they're all going to give us an indication of where our energy's at.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very
true.
So
that's how we build. That's one way anyway that we can fire up our faith, is to pay attention to, what we're taking in, what we're reading, listening to, all of that.
One thing that doing the podcast has done for me is to really reinforce for me the role that enthusiasm plays in building energy. Because back when I first decided that I really wanted this podcast to be primarily entertaining, I made that decision partly because I had heard other law of attraction podcasts, and they were all about just teaching LOA. And, here's how you do it, and you do step A, you do step B, and so. And you listen to that enough, and you get really bored really fast. And I realized the problem was it wasn't entertaining. When we watch TV or we listen to a radio program, we want to be entertained. We want them to kind of pick us up a bit. So that's what made me first think about calling the show Your Daily Dose of Happy and making that the main theme of the show. And I realized pretty early on that one of the best tools we have for making the show happier was just to get enthusiastic. And so I started learning, how can I make myself sound more enthusiastic? Like right now, as I'm talking to you, I don't really have to do it. I don't have to work really hard at it. But early on, I kind of had to. I had to work on getting excited and talking excitedly because that builds enthusiasm. Now,
there's that idea that when you smile,
yeah,
and when you laugh, even if you're kind of putting it on, that your brain starts the process of creating chemicals that cause you to feel happiness.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's an old cliche about that. My dad used to tell us this one. Laugh and the world laughs with you. Cry and you cry alone.
Unfortunately,
yeah, right?
Some of the time, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's true that enthusiasm is a measure, and sometimes we can work it backwards, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's that same old thing. It's like, well, I'll be happy when this happens. It's like, no,
That's really depressing. Seriously, that's one of the most depressing things I can say to myself.
but we hear it a lot.
We do. Oh yeah.
And every once in a while, I catch myself saying it, and then I'll change it. I'll say, well, I'll be happy when, no, I'm happy now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be really pleased when this happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can choose that now. And so the enthusiasm thing and the vibration, I remember, when you ask someone how they are and they tell you they're doing great, but you can hear in their voice, there's no enthusiasm.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm doing great. There's like,
well,
your words are saying that you're doing great, but I don't hear the energy saying that you're doing great. So I think that we can do that. We can actually just decide that we're going to be enthusiastic and see where that leads. And there are some things we can do to help that along. I know you've spoken of one of them pretty often. It works for everybody I know, and that's music.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to music that creates a happy experience.
Well, I like what you said about smiling. I mean, it reminds me of something. I was trying to remember what the television show is. There was a very, very old television show, classic television era. And I can't remember what it was, but there was one particular scene in this very famous TV show where there's a child and an adult. And the adult is saying something to the effect that he's happy about whatever the situation is. And the kid says to the adult, well, then why don't you tell your face that?
Exactly.
Right?
It's one of the things I remember them talking about, my instructors talking about when I was in coaching school, is it's one of the things that coaches are trained to do. And that is to pay attention to the tone, pay attention to the energy, pay attention to the vibration, not just the words.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right.
Well, Abraham talks about that. Abraham says it's not just the words, it's the feeling that's associated with the words. I don't think they're talking about feeling depressed. I mean, yeah, that would be one way to attach feeling, but it would probably produce the opposite result from what you have in mind. They're talking about, feeling the good stuff as you talk about your words, as you use your words. Knowing that when you combine the good feeling with the words, now you're creating the enthusiasm.
So I was thinking about, because we talked about this morning, and we decided that we wanted to continue the conversation this afternoon about firing up your faith and why is that important and how do we do it? And I'm thinking about the list of the 7 things that Jack Canfield mentioned for success. And the one before firing up your faith was leave the complaint department.
Yes.
and I think, thinking about it now, I don't know that he meant for these things to go in order, like step 1, step 2, or he just said, these are the top 7 things. I mean, I don't know. But when I think about it, it is definitely a step in firing up your faith is to stop telling the old story, stop complaining about the way things are.
Oh, yeah.
Because as long as we're complaining, and we read that article a few weeks back, that when you complain, you actually shut down the part of your brain that finds solutions, and you strengthen the part of your brain that's confused. And, it's like, oh my goodness, I definitely don't want to strangle that part of my brain that's good at finding solutions to things. But the other part of it that I see is that we create our experience by the story that we tell about ourselves. And so if we're complaining all the time, how can we have faith?
Yeah.
They seem to contradict each other, to me anyway.
I think you're right. Of course, the question is, for the person who's caught in that trap, how do you reverse it?
Well, I think, that's why I like his words so much. Instead of stop complaining, it says leave the complaint department.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, it has to be a conscious decision on our part. And it's not easy to do. I remember hearing a conversation between some law of attraction coaches, and practitioners or practicers of law of attraction that were saying, okay, we're going to try to go 24 hours without complaining. And they got into this big discussion that was really hilarious because they were saying, wait, does it count if I say I don't like something? Right? Like they were saying, if I say, oh no, I don't really like chocolate ice cream, is that a complaint?
Is that a complaint? Right.
They were really nitpicking at it. And it was really, really funny because they were realizing that they really couldn't go more than, 20 minutes without complaining about something. So I think that's a key, is deciding that you're not going to complain. And then the awareness has to kick in. Because at first, if you decide today, if we decide we're not going to complain from henceforth, I cease to complain, I'm going to start catching myself after the fact.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the way it always unfolds. It's like, oh, I said I wasn't going to complain. And 2 minutes later, I complained about something. But pretty soon, if you hang with it, pretty soon you'll start catching yourself in the middle of the complaint and then right before the complaint. And then, you'll have an easier and easier time to not complain. And I think that's important to firing up our faith.
I think you're right. I would even take a step further. Maybe this shows a kind of a masochistic side to me. I'm not sure. But I think I would tend to try to approach it on a subject that I find to be controversial for myself within my own belief system. And just because my own background is political science, I probably pick something political
I knew
first.
You were going there. I knew you were going
there.
But
it doesn't have to be politics.
Myself, you know what? He's going to say something about, because see, I don't know if I can stop complaining.
But I don't know if it has. But I don't think it has to be politics. It can be anything. I refer to politics just because it's so black and white obvious that people get tripped up trying to say something positive there. But there are actually a lot of areas where we do that. For instance, somebody who is tied up in a relationship that they really dislike intensely, ask that person to say something positive about the relationship, and assuming they can be honest enough to try to do it, you're going to get a lot sounds as they're trying to figure out what possible phrase can they utter that is true and what is positive.
Yep. As a matter of fact, I had this conversation. I do occasionally mentor coaching for other coaches, and I had a conversation recently where this is what together we came up with is not. I don't even know if we used the word positive, but we used the word appreciate. We said, find one thing that you can appreciate about this person that there was a great deal of conflict going on with. Mm-hmm. Two people that were having conflict, that were outside of the realm of our session, but we both decided that would be the ultimate thing to do, is to say, each of these people that are trying to work through a conflict, the most important thing you can do right now is every day think of one thing you appreciate about that person.
And there could be a lot of mind racking trying to come up with it.
Oh yeah, that's why we said one thing and not 10 things.
Thank goodness. It could have taken a year for that one.
Right? So that's because the way I think about it is, it might seem unrelated. Wait, I thought we were going to talk about how to really fire up our faith where we could believe for anything. And now you're talking about, I have to stop complaining. But to me, it's a bit double-minded to think that we can complain and have faith at the same time.
That's right.
Because we can only point our focus if we want to have, you used the term a while back, when we were talking about mirror work, you used the term laser focus. You were like, I am developing the ability to be laser focused and really fast. I want to be able to just laser in.
Right.
I don't see how you can laser focus. To me, laser focus is all about faith.
It is.
I don't see how you can laser focus in on that thing that you want while you're complaining about that thing you don't want.
You can't. It's impossible.
So doesn't it seem like if we drop the complaining, I mean, this is one of the things that I know from energy leadership. Like often we talk about the scale, the emotional scale, and how it's directly, it corresponds to that energy scale. So complaining is at that lower level of energy, victim energy, conflict energy. And we all have the same amount of energy. It's just where it's flowing.
Where are we focusing it?
When we drop the lower level stuff, when we just stop complaining, that energy has to go somewhere. It automatically pops up into the higher levels. And I always want to be sure that I'm clear, me anyway. You might have a different opinion, but I feel like a formal complaint about something, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, I'm not talking about something happened and I need to go to even though this is leave the complaint department, I'm going to go write a letter about it to someone that maybe can change it and help it and remedy this. I think that's fine. That's part of the solution. I'm talking about that nagging complaining that we do, where we're whining about things all the time.
Yeah, I agree with that? I agree with you. I think the way I like to express it is, where am I going to live? Am I going to live in that energy of the complaint, or am I going to simply register a complaint and then go live in the positive range? If I'm just going to register a complaint and go live in the positive range, the registered complaint has almost no energy left anymore. But if I register the complaint and then I'm thinking about it and then I'm telling somebody else about it and I'm building it up and I'm going back and thinking about it the next day and I'm waking up in the middle of the night and thinking about it, I'm living in it. I'm living in it.
Right. We're carrying it with us into the next day and into the next day and into the next day.
Yeah.
And I think that's my point about registering the complaint.
Yes.
It's like, okay, file that complaint and be done with it.
We live in a world of contrast. Part of living in a world of contrast is saying, yes, I want that. No, I don't want that. It's perfectly okay to say, I don't want that.
Right.
You just don't want to stay on that. That's all.
Exactly. And a lot of times I think that whininess, just whining about things. I'm guilty. I'm raising my hand. I've done it.
Well, it's almost like we have to talk somebody into the idea that we don't want it. We go out of our way to explain to people all the different reasons why we don't want it.
Yeah.
And they will repeat them again.
We're justifying our dislike of
Of course.
Instead of just the thing that we stressed over and over again. It seems so simple, but I'm telling you, if you could just learn to do this and do it by default, and that's pivot, you won't be living at the complaint department if you learn how to pivot and talk about what you do want.
Well, not just learn how to, learn to do it regularly. You're talking about building it in as a habit, really, because you can learn how to pivot.
Build your faith.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But you can learn how to pivot and not use it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not talking about theory. I'm talking about practice.
Right.
Yeah, because you know what, the law of attraction, it works. Conscious creation works in practice. It doesn't work in theory.
Which is a funny statement. In theory, the law of attraction doesn't really work.
No, it doesn't. It works in practice.
That's a really funny point. But it's true. It's absolutely true. Because until you're actually doing it, you're just stuck where you were before.
I remember getting a very clear message. I always say, I didn't hear an audible voice, but the universe spoke to me pretty loudly. It's like, you don't need any more books. You need to just practice. Like, you don't need any more knowledge, because I'm a lifelong learner. I'm never going to stop learning. I love to learn. I love books. I need a new bookshelf because books are everywhere. I love to read. I love to learn. I love knowledge. And I never will stop learning. But at that point, I remember it pretty clear. It was probably 10 years ago. I was looking for a book. I was looking for a tool. I was looking for something. And it was a very loud message that, you don't need another tool. You don't need more knowledge. You need to use what you've got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if all you have was the knowledge that you and your thoughts and your consciousness, your story of yourself is what creates everything you experience. If all you knew was that, and all you knew was how to pivot, you'd be able to start making huge changes in your life, right?
That is possible, yeah.
I mean, you don't need hundreds of books and, hundreds of tools. It's great that we have them, and I love them.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't work in theory. We have to put them to use and actually do them.
It's a really great point, and I love the way we phrased it. It doesn't work in theory because that's not the way we tend to think about stuff. Well, in theory it should work. That's the way we think about stuff. But in fact, it doesn't literally work in theory. In fact, nothing actually works in theory. Which is it's so funny to even say that. But it's true. Computers don't work in theory. They work in the actual room you're in when you plug them in. They don't work in the realm of theory. There is no work that ever happens in the realm of theory. It just doesn't happen.
Right. So I feel like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm watching the clock and I'm like, we're winding up. And what would I say to someone that asked me for the top, 1, 2, 3 ways, things to actually do, right? To put into practice to fire up faith.
Honestly, at this point, my answer is going to be pretend that you're enthusiastic.
I like it.
It sounds really strange. I mean, why would you want to pretend something, especially if you're not feeling it? But it's a funny thing. If you actually pretend to be enthusiastic, I learned this from doing the podcast. If I get enthusiastic with a co-host, my co-host gets enthusiastic. And in your words, the energy entrains unto itself. Just because I got enthusiastic about something I really wasn't feeling enthusiastic about. Well, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, and it starts to become default. We want it to become our default.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that you're never again going to experience a blue moment, a down moment, feeling sad, feeling grief, feeling angry, feeling frustrated, feeling disappointed. I mean, those are all, they're valid emotions. They're part of the human experience. And when we feel them, they don't feel good. And they also let us know something.
Mm-hmm.
They let us know that it's not what we want. We want something different. We're not aligned with our higher, wiser self, with our greater self. It's a great thing. It's the red light on the engine dashboard saying, stop and get gas. You need to fire up your faith.
Pretty much.
And so how do we do that? I like your suggestion to just put on some enthusiasm.
Yeah, just pretend you're enthusiastic about something. Everybody can emulate that standard radio announcer thing, right? Where you have the guy who's giving the promotion, something like go to our restaurant today and you'll have the best meal of your life. Nobody actually believes that, but anybody can replicate that. Well, you can do the same thing about the things that you want to believe in. You can say, okay, I want to build my faith in the law of attraction. So say something like, yes, you too can use the law of attraction. And you're building the energy up.
There's that simple affirmation that we've talked about that's very famous because it got such great results and still does, but it's every day in every way I'm getting better and better.
Oh, yes.
And we can use that to apply to our conscious creation practice, right? Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. Like, remind yourself every day in every way, you're getting better and better at this.
And say it enthusiastically, just the way you did. Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better.
And I think that, have you ever been in a store like when they just opened or just a shift change and they're having like a little pep rally with the people that work there?
I can't say I've seen that lately. So tell me about it. No, not really.
I just the other day, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what store I was in, but there were, 6 or 8 people in the back, and all of a sudden they just were making a ruckus back there. They were cheering and clapping and woo, and some of the people that were in the front smiled and said, little pep rally going on back there.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, because I've seen that before, and I thought to myself, that is such a great example of conscious creation.
Yeah.
Like, they meet before their shift. Oh, look at ball teams.
Oh, yeah.
Right? When they do their little rally before they go out to play.
Right.
Right? Where they all get together and they 1, 2, 3 and they shout their name or they shout whatever. Like, they are pumping themselves up.
Exactly.
They are manufacturing enthusiasm.
They are. And it works.
And I guarantee that when you see a circle like that, even if 9 out of 10 people in the circle really are excited and enthusiastic, there may be 1 or 2 that just weren't feeling it when they got there, but they're feeling it now because energy entrains
because
to it.
It does. It entrains to itself every time. We just don't take enough advantage of it. That's all. But if we did, wow, the more that we take advantage of that simple fact, the more we can build up faith and belief to levels we've never built it up before. And I know that just from doing the podcast. I am so fortunate to have all of you wonderful co-hosts working with me. And every time I talk to every one of you, I feel so much better afterward. And I say to myself, wow, it's so great to have that other person who's saying all this stuff that I believe in, and I get to respond to that person, and I get to interact with them. And then when I do, my enthusiasm builds. I like that.
And I would say another thing is notice what, if you're I don't watch a lot of video, but I know a lot of people do. And so you'll notice, like, people watch a video, or with me, it's reading books. And I know certain books and certain passages that always inspire me. Mm-hmm. They build my faith.
They do.
I get excited when I read them. I have aha moment. Oh my gosh, that is so good. I just want to read that again. And all my books are just scribbled in and highlighted. And so if you pay attention to that, to what video you watched that really fired you up, to what, book that you read, and go back to those things.
Yeah.
Use those tools.
Yeah. One of my favorite videos is a Robin Williams video when he appeared on television on Bravo TV on the show Inside the Actors Studio. Talk about enthusiasm. I mean, from the moment he was introduced, his enthusiasm level was on 25 on a scale of 1 to 10. I mean, he was just like bouncing around the room with enthusiasm. And it almost didn't even matter what he said. Of course, he was Robin Williams, so everything that came out of his mouth was this endless spiel of funny stuff. But The enthusiasm level was so high. I mean, they panned the audience periodically with the camera, and everybody, you could just see they were alive with the energy of it. They were just alive with it. And there were a few who were, they were laughing at everything. There was one woman in particular who just couldn't stop laughing. Everything that came out of his mouth, he didn't have to say 3 words, and she's laughing uproariously.
And I guarantee they had the camera on her because that causes everyone else to entrain to that energy and laugh too.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, it even affected him. He called on her at one point and said, "You have the world's greatest laugh."
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is how you fire up your faith.
Exactly right. That's it. I'm glad we said that too, because before we did the show, I didn't really know what the answer was going to be. And when you asked me the question, as you were asking the question, I didn't know what the answer was going to be, but then it just came out of my mouth. Get enthusiastic.
And we're good at it.
Apparently. So the next time we're in one of those situations where we're not feeling good and there doesn't seem to be any real good answers, and somebody just asked me, what is it I like about my relationship and I hate my relationship in every possible way, pick something and just get enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter what you're getting enthusiastic about. Just find the enthusiasm, because when you start to feel that, you're coming into alignment.
That's it, isn't it? Right there. Mm-hmm. It's all about getting into alignment, and that's really what the enthusiasm does. It gets us into alignment. Once
you get into alignment, that's where inspiration comes from.
Yes.
And once you feel inspired, you'll know what actions to take.
Isn't that weird how when we're in that bad place, nothing comes. And when we're in the good place, all of a sudden the ideas come. I mean, that's what we're talking about right there.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
People always want to know, what am I supposed to do? It's like, well, start here first.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Well, speaking of starting here, and we only have a few seconds left, sometimes you need a life coach to give you that little pep talk that says, get enthusiastic. So if somebody needs a little enthusiasm, you're a perfect life coach for that. How do they reach out to you?
They can find me online at cindiechavez.com, CINDIECHAVEZ.com. Come and say hello.
That sounds great. Well, have an enthusiastic week, Cindie. I can't wait to talk to you again next week.
I can't wait to talk to you next week.
And we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.